welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through the industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Shane Jacob. He's the founder of Horsemanship Journey, combining personal development with horsemanship. He is a certified life coach, professional horseman, entrepreneur, and author. Welcome to the show, Shane.
AJ, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Appreciate your show.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India. And I'm sure not only in India, but across the globe, which the show is going on and many platforms, including audio platforms, which I will put later on. A lot of people will be able to benefit from the horsemanship journey, as well as, your understanding about life. So first, to start with, Shane, is that what exactly is the, horsemanship journey? You are the founder of this particular company. So tell us about this, and, so that people learn more about that. No more horsing around, but actually to get on with the real stuff in life and live the life that they want to, that they deserve so much.
All right. Well, a little bit of horsing around. I don't know. I think a little bit of horsing around is okay, AJ. I'll back up just a little bit to what you said in the beginning, and you said this is going to millions of people. I'm going to take something from one of our guests. Over the last 2 years, I interviewed 75 of the top horse professionals and experts in human development in the world. One of our guests was a gentleman, a man named Ben Kerr, excuse me, who's an Olympic wrestler, and his message to the world is victim or victor. And he said at the beginning of the interview, and I'm going to copy his statement, he said, Shane, if one person gets one thing that they can take out of this, just think of the impact that would have. And I'm going with that today. I mean, I think that a lot of people hopefully will get a lot of things, but if you as a listener take away one thing, I'm considering this a huge success. The horsemanship journey is the idea. We are the idea that, and this applies to anything. Our thing just so happens to be horses and horse people, but it's like any endeavor. It could be a dog thing. It could be your business. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be horses. But the idea is that it's not really about that. It's about here. Everything starts here in two places, here and here. Now, horses, it just so turns out that horse problems are people problems, and horses are also a relationship, but a lot of it's easy. I noticed this early on. It's really easy when you're in the horse industry, you're doing something with a horse, whatever it might be, whatever your deal is with horses. We look at the horse and we kind of shift. We give the horse the responsibility of what's going on rather than really look in to get our results. And so our idea in life and in horsemanship is to begin here if we want results.
Right, Shane. So let's talk about, you say that you were born to win. We are all born to win. A lot of people consider this life as a race. So can everyone win in this race? Do all horses win in a race? Sometimes it is they say the best trained horses, the best bred horses, or the horses of a very good breed, when they are bred properly, they win. How do you see this, or help us understand this winning factor in life? Either if it's a race or if it's not a race even, how we can still win? How would you like to help us understand this winning part in this journey called life, either in business, in our personal lives, in our relationships? And along with that, if it's all about the right breed and the right breeding, then what about the dark horse? How can we still win in spite of being the dark horse in this race of life?
That's an awesome question. Lights me up to hear it. That's a super question, because the reality of it is not everybody's going to win. That's just going to be the way it is. There's only a few are going to actually win in this race. So the determination is that's an excellent question. It reminds me of a story. Early on, when I was a young man, I had a chance to work with a good friend. He turned out to be a good friend of mine. He's an excellent trainer and a horseman, and he taught me more about horses and life than probably anyone. His name's Rick Steed. And I would be following him around, trying to model what he was doing and listening. And as I'd be watching him give lessons to people and perform in shows and stuff, I was constantly hearing everyone in the background would be saying, "Oh, Rick has so much talent. Rick is just, he was born on a horse. I mean, you know, he was born with a horse." And it was on and on about his talent. And I would say that he probably did have, so that he came with some, you know, his DNA came with something, and that was helpful to him. But you know what? The thing of it is, AJ, that those people that were making that noise and were seeing the end result, they didn't see some of the things that I saw Rick doing. The things like waking up at 5 a.m. and, you know, practicing roping, catching 100 heads in a row before he'd go feed the horses, and then he'd ride. And I mean, he was a working machine. I mean, that talent was, as a quote unquote talent, was a result of his work. We look at the same thing when we look at horses. In performance horses, we look at two things: the ability and what I'm going to call the tri-level. That means that horse's willingness to participate in when you're asking it to. Okay, two things. And I'm an employer as an entrepreneur, and we hire people, and in life, and I look at myself first, and I say, first of all, we have some sort of limitations. Mainly, you know, I'm probably not gonna, there's certain things that I'm physically probably not going to do, but because most of our limitations are ones that we place on ourselves. They may or may not be founded in reality, because the reality is what we give ourselves. But there is an element that we have been given certain DNA, and I'm going to call those things tendencies. Okay, it's not those are tendencies. Okay, but I still have control over those tendencies. That's a super important part. It's an extremely important part of personal responsibility, that you listen to the language, things like, well, I've always been that way. Well, my family is this. Well, it might be how much money you have. Well, I can't do that because of this. Or I've always been that way, AJ. I've always been that way. And so when we accept that as reality, then we've accepted those tendencies. But the thing of it is that we don't have to accept those tendencies. We have control over the tendencies even that we've been given. So if I have an addictive tendency, or I have a tendency, let's just say I have an addictive tendency, that means that it's maybe easier for me than the next person to become an alcoholic or a drug addict. Okay, but I still, in between that result and my tendency, is my choice, Stephen Covey called it to move from dependency, where we're dependent on, or determinism, right? Where we're determined by our DNA, or what our parents told us when we were kids, or whatever, determines who we are in this race for life. And then we move to independency, where we're in control. And then eventually, hopefully, we can move to interdependency, where we have the ability to cooperate with others for even a larger result. But let's go back to becoming independent and realizing in life, we may or may not been born with the best blood. We may or may not been. Let me just tell you about me. Okay, I have never considered myself to be the greatest horseman, the greatest entrepreneur, the greatest really anything. But I'll tell you what I do. Anyone that knows me will guarantee you that I try harder. And that's the second element, is that in horses, you can take a Jenny burro and a little old burro, a little old donkey, and they can do amazing things if they have the will. And the tri-levels, what I like to call it in horses, is the ability to do so. So in this race for life, the answer to your question is, not everybody's going to win, but the people who choose to win and then take the action to do so and make up for whatever tendencies or personality or traits that they were given with their DNA when they were born, that they have complete control over that when you assume responsibility, which in my mind is one of the two main components to a successful life, is developing a commitment to develop your own personal responsibility. When you decide to do that and take control of your tendencies, okay, your tendencies, maybe you practice harder than that horse next to you. Maybe you practice more. Maybe that's what it takes for you to win. And that's okay when you assume the responsibility, because the answer is everyone in earshot of this and around the world has the ability to win that race. I firmly believe it.
Absolutely. Everyone has this ability to win the race. But then a lot of people have these crippling self-doubts, as you say. So, how do I know that, okay, these are just doubts and that I inherently have that, horsepower within me? So, how do I know whether I have that horsepower within me? Who tells me that I have the horsepower? How do I discover that horsepower and get on with the race of life, and rather than, back down and that this race is not for me? Who tells me that? In the case of horses, it is either the trainer who can know, or it is the person who actually knows about your stuff. Certainly, mentors can do that in real life. So how, even in businesses, how does a person know? Because in horses, different horses are of different breed. You can still, but you still have to have that experience to distinguish that, okay, this is the real horse that can win me the race. Even in businesses, you got to find the right people. Even in relationship, you got to find the right person for yourself. How do you know the human being in front of you is actually the horse or the dark horse which will win the race, and not donkey in the shape of a horse? How do you differentiate that? Finding your horsepower, and also finding the right horses in life for your businesses, for your relationship, which will walk along with you and not push you off their backs when you are in the middle of the biggest battle in your life.
Wow. That's an enormous question and a good one. Begin with the first part of that you talked about, AJ, which is, how do we know that we actually have the horsepower? How do we know? Another guest that we had on the Horsemanship Journey show was Cheryl Green, and she made a statement, and it was a pretty bold statement. She said that every negative behavior that humans make is a result or a reflection of their low self-concept or their low self-esteem. And I thought a lot about that. And I don't know that I could prove it to you, but I definitely agree with that. I'm pretty serious about this idea of developing the way that we view ourselves. And I'll tell you why. For whatever reason, I'll tell you a little story about me. For whatever reason, when I was young, when I was in my teens or something, I don't know why. I feel like I believe that I had a great upbringing and good, solid parents and good values. But for some reason, subconsciously, it wasn't a really loud voice, but I thought I wasn't the same. I didn't quite measure up. Something was a little bit wrong with me. I just wasn't quite as good as everybody else. For some reason, I thought this, and what it did in retrospect, I look back now, it caused me to do two things. It caused me to hide and lie. Okay. What I mean by hide is I acted shy. I didn't want to come out. I didn't want to talk to you. I reserved myself. I held myself back. And the other thing is sometimes I would tell mistruths in order for you to think that I was what I thought that I would be, that you would like me. There's a lady, Mel Robbins, is an author and coach here. And Mel Robbins told a story in a podcast I listened to recently where this is an example of lying. She says she was dating her, which now became her husband. excuse me, she was dating, and they were talking about fishing, and she grew up trolling on a boat. But she didn't think trolling was cool. So she told her potential future husband that she was a experienced fly fisherman, because fly fishing's cool if you can do that. So he said, great. He booked him a trip because he had a great friend who was a fly fishing instructor in Yellowstone National Park here. And so now she's in big trouble. She's told this enormous lie, and she's about so the question is, why do we do these things, right? Well, eventually he forgave her and saw that, and and they ended up getting married and have a great marriage. But I would also do things like this. As a result, I believe, as a result of my what am I going to call this? A lack of discipline, and the idea that I didn't think I measure up was in part the reason that I drank to excess for over 20 years. Okay. I crawled into a bottle and hid. When I say hide, I mean hid. So my idea of believing in ourselves and what we can come and having a commitment to improve our self-image. When I say this, I'm really serious about it. And matter of fact, it's not a good idea to make that commitment to improve your self-image. It's not a good idea. I believe it's our solemn duty, and I'll tell you why. Because we do not have the ability to become all that we can have the potential to become. And even more importantly, probably, is that to be able to give to anyone else and to the rest of the world if we do not have that foundation of believing in ourselves and liking ourselves. So here's your question. Well, that's hunky-dory, Shane. That's real nice. But how do you do that? I have my self-doubts. I don't know if I'm really that. I don't know if I can win the race. Can I win the race? I mean, I look in the mirror and I don't know if that guy can win the race. Am I really that guy? And so here's two things, okay? Here's two things that you can do. And just pay attention to this. Just begin with this. Pay attention. This is a little thought process to help you begin improving the relationship with yourself, because eventually you want to be forgiving to yourself, and you want to really like that person that you see in the mirror, and you're going to believe that person can win the race as you start to act that way and you start to win that. Because a belief, it's been said, is something that you hold in your mind and you continue to prove it true. So if you hold that thought in your mind and then you continue to prove it true. So if I look in the mirror and I say, Shane, you are a badass, you can and will, you are winning the race, and you're going to ultimately win this race in life that you want. Now, in addition to saying that and holding that thought in my mind, I need to continue to believe it true. And the way that we can do that is two things, and that is to pay attention to our self-talk and our thoughts. If we catch ourselves with a thought or a word going out of our mouth that says, oh man, AJ, I'm sorry I was late to this interview today. I'm such an idiot. I am such an idiot. I suck at being on time. Okay. Or any of these little things like this, let me tell you something. These thoughts that are going through our heads, these little sentences, whether they come out of our mouth or not, they mean things. They're very important to our belief in our own self. So that's the beginning. That's the beginning. Pay attention to the thoughts and pay attention to the words that we speak about ourselves, and don't take it lightly. Do not take it lightly. We owe it to ourselves and our relationships, in our families, and to the rest of the world to make a commitment to improve the relationship we have with ourselves, because unless we do that, we're not going to be able to reach the potential that God gave us to be able to, that we have on this earth, and that we can, and the ability to give to others is going to be limited. You said, right. I'm going to come back now. You want me to go on? Because you asked me a huge question. Let me just touch on this.
Yes, carry on, Shane. No problem at all. This is a good discussion going on.
Okay, very good. So, all right, that's just a little touch on that. But I'm so serious about that, because the day that I crawled out of the bottle and I started to really believe, I stopped hiding as much. Okay. And this is a work in progress. Just let me say that. It's not like, oh, now I'm a confident person, I can accomplish the world. No, sometimes things happen. It takes a little chink in me, in my confidence. And so this is an ongoing lifetime pursuit to improve the way that we are. So just know that every day is not going to be a solid, uphill, kind of like the stock market. So the second part of your question is when we look at the world, how do we know what kind of a team? I think you were asking. Are you a donkey inside that thoroughbred, or are you the kind of person that I want to surround myself with?
Right.
We hear this and we hear this. I don't know that I'm really trying to take it in, and I hope you and your listeners, I hope we all take it in, because this is a principle that's so important to success and achievement. And that is that, Jim Rohn says that we equal the average of the 5 people that we spend our most time with. We know that this is important. And it was proven to me over the last 2 years when I interviewed 75 of these individuals, because I would tell you, when I asked them the last question in the interview on every one of them, I said, what would you like to leave us with today? Probably, I would say 75 to 80% of those people said, get a mentor, get a teacher, get somebody who's been down this road, copy, follow, model, and surround yourself with those people, not people that are dragging you down. So we do need, it's so important that that's why this show, when I heard from you, I was so excited to be on your show because the kind of ideas that I hear when I listen to your show, and I had a chance to listen to a number of your episodes over the last little while, they just light me up, and so it's awesome to be able to have this medium to be able to talk about these things, and you can hear it. So I'm going to leave you one thing to say about that. When we're listening to who we're going to surround ourselves with, listen to the same kind of things that we're talking to ourselves. When you hear people blaming others, or, well, I couldn't do this because of this, or I wasn't told this, and my last employer didn't work out because he blah, blah, blah. These are little clues to us that we're not throwing that person away. We're just saying that maybe I don't know if this is the best use of my time right now is to surround myself with that kind of person that has that kind of language, because that kind of language that we can hear, it's a little indicator of how, their thought process and how they perform in life. So I'll leave you with that thought.
Right, Shane. Well explained. And in fact, you'd mentioned about whining. So in today's time, you see, it's a nature of a horse to whine, and then they will get back into the race and win it for you. But a lot of humans whine. Even a lot of youngsters whine day to day in and day out. A lot of employees whine. Leaders whine. They are not horse. They all have horsepower, but they are not using that perhaps. So how do I, and they are not, a lot of these whining is not leading to winning of any races. But when you are a team and when you have a few people who whine all the time, how do I know whether they actually have the horsepower or not? Because then there will be a drag on my resources. And how do I even know? You talk about skills, knowledge, and integrity. So they may have the skills, they may also have the knowledge. Integrity is very difficult to find out in the short run. So how do I know that these whining characters are going to be actually using their horsepower in the longer run, or it is the time to remove them off the team because they are not going to be an asset to the team, and their whining is a permanent one, which we are, and they are not the horses. They are humans in the short, and they are not horses in life. How do I filter out these people? Because it is very important for a leader to understand that, or it will leave a huge dent in whatever you are doing. And you, again, as I said, in the middle of the battle, you will be left nowhere else.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the question comes back to leadership, and I think that it's a leadership question, the way I understand your question, AJ, and it's a good one. And the way that I see that is that the first place that we need to look is right here. The first place that we need to look. you know, I believe that if we focus on two things, just two things, it's a simple process. If we make the commitment to improve and to continually improve the relationship that we have with ourselves, so that we can come to believe that we have tremendous value and tremendous ability and tremendous love and appreciation for ourselves. I think that's part one that we talked about. You're touching on part two, which is personal responsibility, which is a huge subject. But the first place that we need to look is right here. When you say whining, what I think of is everybody whines. I'm guilty of it every now and then. And basically what whining comes down to is I'm complaining, or really what I'm doing is I'm shifting the responsibility, whether it's the responsibility of my attitude right now, that she makes me so mad. She is so hard to work with. I don't know how she expected me to do this in this blah, 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 right? So I'm just complaining about someone else, or I'm whining about the weather, or whatever I'm seeming to be whining about. What I'm doing is I'm shifting the responsibility away from me. And when we do that in any way, what we're doing is we're giving our horsepower away. We don't know it. It's usually not a conscious thought process. Usually it's like something happens to us and we simply react to it by, well, this outside force thing happened to us. We'll call that a neutral circumstance. Okay. And we just look at the circumstance and we come up with it. We formulate this meaning about it. Okay. So let's just say that, AJ, you were agreed to turn in, you had something that had a deadline that I needed you to do today, and you didn't turn it in, and you just didn't get it done on the deadline. And so I say, that AJ, he didn't get his thing done. Now we're going to have, this is a result, and this is a result, and this is a result. And my day sucks because that damn AJ, if he would have just turned that thing in time, everything else would have been fine. Well, there's my complaining and my whining. And what I've done now is I've shifted all the responsibility to you and what you did. I can't do anything about that. That's something you did, right? So the first thing that we need to do is look to ourselves and say to ourselves, how am I leading and setting the example in this group for whining and complaining and anything else? Because the only way, here's the key to your own horsepower, AJ. The answer is when we take these circumstances, no matter what it is that happens to us. The gentleman, Jocko, can't think of their names, that wrote the book Extreme Ownership. This is probably a great example. There's a story in there, and I'll just kind of try to paraphrase it, where there's two soldiers, and they have a wounded, one of their wounded, and he's dying and he's bleeding, and they need to get him to the chopper, but the radio's down, and a guy forgot to get they didn't get the coordinates right, and the radio broke up, and the medic forgot some of the pieces in his first aid kit, and there's all this stuff is going wrong around them, and there's bombs going off, and that's just a bad news. And if they start focusing on, hey, who forgot, to bring the bandages, and why didn't you give the guy in the chopper the right coordinates? And if they start focusing on that, this guy dies. The only thing that matters is, what can I do to get this man to the chopper to save his life? That's the only thing that matters. That's the key to our horsepower, AJ, is looking right here. When those things happen and we catch ourselves and we complaining or whining, is to just, that's the whole key. That right there, if you start to be aware and acknowledge when those things, when we're doing it ourselves, and just stop it and ask yourself this one question: what can I do? That's your horsepower right there. Just stop it and say, what can I do? Because then you've given yourself back the power and you can move forward. Without that, you're powerless. And so you're not going to be a performer. You're going to be back there a quarter mile, and you're probably not going to win that race. That doesn't mean you're not going to win the life's race, but that race that day, you're probably out of. And the same thing applies. So in leadership, I think that we need to be leading the way. We need to be looking here first. Now, when we look out to our teams, we say, that's going to be an individual assessment. It's like how much it's good, better, best. We don't want to throw people away. We have to measure that. How much time and energy do I want to put into you? And are you willing? See, are you willing? This is the big key. When I hire people that come through our back gate, I have a horse feed company. I ask them, there's one thing that we measure. That's not true. There's one thing that we measure the most, and that is your effort, your willingness, your attitude. Because if you're giving what you can, you still work here right now, today. You work for me, for my company, if you're giving everything that you have the ability to give. So I think that with teams, we can encourage and try to build desire in people, but some of that it has to come from in. But I think the most important is that we're setting the example.
Right, Shane. One thing I wanted to understand is that, horses are always focused on what they have to do when they are told to do. Otherwise, still, they will remain a horse with their horsepower. But they will never become a donkey, and they will never make an ass of themselves. But humans, they have the horsepower. We can assume that everybody has that horsepower. And they also know that they have the intellect, they have the knowledge, and even many of the skills. Still, in this present age, especially with all the technology, with all the advancement, with all the education a lot of people have, and a lot of toxicity that is surrounding us, we are not using our intellect, and we continue to make an ass of ourselves, an ass of everything that we have been gifted by the Almighty. Whether you can take it a climate change, whether you can take it scrolling down on your phones all the time and limiting your world and forgetting about your horsepower. How do you see this present situation and the way leadership, individuals, humanity going forward? Are we going to win this battle against all the odds that we have as humans going forward with making an ass of ourselves, either jointly or in our own small stables that we put our lives in? How do you see this?
I was recently listening to Earl Nightingale, which is kind of one of the early leaders of personal development in the 1960s. And when he talked about the greatest secret in the world. And in that broadcast, or in that talk, he talked about how easy it had become to get by. He's like, it really doesn't take much to get by. You can get a job, you can work through that job, and you can survive this world. And the thing of it is it's more true today than it ever has been, that to get by, it doesn't take a whole lot of effort. We really don't even have to try. We have government systems that'll pick us up if we actually do pretty much nothing. And even just to have a mediocre existence, it doesn't take a whole hell of a lot of effort. I'm not saying it takes none, but it doesn't take an extreme effort. So it's become extremely easy. We're living in such an amazing time of such abundance everywhere and such opportunity that it's really, I think it's become easy not to, because our brains, I think, are just kind of will accept comfortable. They will accept comfortable. So the question is why would we? Why would we want to? And how do we come to get to that place that how do we come to get to that place to where we want to step out of average and actually do something about it? in horses are the same as people, and I realize this, and that is that every time that we have an interaction with horses, they're either moving up, and when I say moving up, I want to say improving. Okay, and what I mean by improving is towards the desired result that we want. So in the relationship that we have with horses, here's an example. If I walk through a gate into a pasture with a horse and I approach that horse up into a certain point, in other words, if I get to a certain closeness with him, I'm going to call that an interaction. And every time that I interact with that horse, from that closeness all the way through, whether it's whatever it is, it can start just from being 50 yards away, or it can start, end up in a horse race or some performance or whatever. But anytime that I interact with that horse is either moving towards or moving away from my desired result based on how I interact with that horse. Okay? So there is no equal ground. We don't just stay still and get by in life. We're either moving up or we're moving down. You say, well, Shane, I do the same thing every day. Every time I go to that horse, I do the same thing. Well, you're either reinforcing a negative behavior or reinforcing a positive behavior. Therefore, you're either still moving up or moving down. And it's the same exact thing. Every day when we wake up, and we're either reinforcing the good or the bad habits that we have, and we're either moving or moving. There is no equal stay still ground. So because it's so easy, we just don't really have to reach out there and try. The thing of it is that I believe that there's a church leader, Russell M. Nelson, said that we all human beings have a divinely instilled yearning towards eternal progression. And I think somewhere rattling around in there, even though things are comfortable, we all want to feel like we're moving, that we're progressing, that we're moving forward, that we want to feel that. I don't know, feeling it and actually getting it done are two different things, but I know that, and I believe that, I see it and I believe it. So the question is creating desire. And we do that in horses. We say, well, this horse doesn't seem like he's trying for me. How can I create desire in horses? And so we look at that with ourselves and other people and say, how can we create desire? And we do this. I'll tell you how we do it. We do it is through our imagination. Sean Covey told me his father was Stephen Covey, that wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I interviewed Sean Covey for the Horsemanship Journey. And he brought up the idea of an imagination. And at the time when I was talking to him, all I could think of, AJ, was like the idea of an imagination to me brought me back to when I was a kid in make-believe land, And I said to him, I'm like, is that really a good use of your time, is to, use your imagination? I mean, to me, it was such a foreign idea. I couldn't grasp it, And then I became to understand it, of how important this imagination is to us, to create desire, to move us out of mediocrity and get us on a trail that we can start to reach potential and have the more meaning, the more power, the more zeal in our lives. I mean, to me, when I wake up these days, I've got to a place to where it's like, how good can I get today? I'm like, it's me against life, and I'm ready. I'm ready for you, life. And, it's not like that 24/7. It's a work in progress, but that's the way that I like to, that's my target goal of the days. And I think that if we just take a look at our comfortableness and maybe use our imagination and say, hey, we don't need to know that we can win the race, and say, well, what if I could do this? And just start thinking, what would that be like if I could do this? And start those little wheels turning. What would that be like? And then I can begin to go down the process of turning that into a belief, because the moment that I believe that I can do that, I can start becoming that, and then I'm there. I mean, I'm going to win by a head, by a neck, by a length. I'm going to win the race.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Shane. So there is so much to learn from you, Shane. And this is just a podcast episode. So 40 minutes, 45 minutes will still be never enough with the amount of information, insight, and learning and understanding about life and horses that one can get from you. So how do people connect with you? How can they know more about what you do, what you talk in the horsemanship journey? Tell us about that so that people can get more engaged with you, understand more about life directly from you.
Hey, Jay, I so much appreciate you having me on your show here. I love your show, and I love the idea of your show. And I appreciate all the guests, whoever has a chance to hear my words right now. I thank you also for joining us. If you're interested in personal development and/or horses, we're everywhere. We're thehorsemanshipjourney.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and TikTok.
Right, Shane. My last question to you, Shane, is that, horses know what they got to do with their horsepower. They win races. In terms of human beings, we have that horsepower. We have got our humanity with us. We are forgetting the empathy part of our existence, but we still are humans. What do we do with our horsemanship? Should we focus on the race, or should we focus on the journey of life? That is one part. Second part is, what do you do with your horse?
Okay.
And what
Yeah.
more that you have going forward? What is it that you seek for yourself going forward?
Okay. Yeah. Primarily, I've done a lot of things in horses. Boy, I'll tell you what. I started out trying to be a rodeo cowboy. I rode bareback horses. I grew up with horses as a kid on a sheep ranch. My dad had a lot of horses we rode growing up, and then I started training colts and breaking horses for people, and then primarily I've been shown a little bit in reining horses. Right now, I have 4 yearlings and 1 3-year-old gelding that I like to school and develop, and so that's what I do. I'm involved in it. I'm also a farrier, so I put shoes and take care of hoof care for horses. I've been a farrier for the last 30 years. Horses are one of the good and magnificent things that I appreciate in this world. They're a gift, and a lot of lessons to be learned there. Going forward, I have my goal with the horsemanship journey is that if you is the same as it is with this interview today. If you are at a place in your life where you're ready and you have the desire to try, you want to win the race for yourself, that my deal is to help you know that you can, because you absolutely can. It's such a big deal that we don't know. Brooke Castillo is she's the owner of the Life Coach School, and she has a pretty successful business. Last year, she did about $52 million worth of business. And she's been a life coach for, I don't know, I'm going to say about 15 years. I'm not really sure. But she said in all of her coaching and all of her experience, it comes down to the issues that people have. And when they look at change, what they come down to is a lack of worthiness inside. And like I said before, I believe that it is our duty to develop our own, make a commitment to improve our own relationship with ourselves, so that we can be able to reach more of our potential, and that we can give that to the people that we love and the rest of the world. And that message is my message. I believe people are inherently good inside. I know that. I know that. And so the more of that we can let out to the world, I don't think that we're doomed and gloomed. I think this is only the beginning of a magnificent future to come. And if I can play 1 ounce a part of that, I'm here for that.
Wonderful, wonderful. On this positive note, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.